Hello, so in this video I'm going to be giving some tips around interviews in social work, and I've been a social worker for over 5 years now and I've been to quite a few interviews, and each time I've just been taking notes of questions asked, so I'm going to be including some of those in this and also giving people advice around general themes that might come up, but also potential things to think about with the answers. So firstly, something that's often asked is around why you wanted to be a social worker in the first place or why you want the job. So it seems obvious, but sometimes because it's the first question it can just make you feel like you've gone blank. So I definitely think that you can prepare for this question by just writing a few bullet points before the interview as part of your preparation, just thinking about how you're going to structure your answer and the order in which you're going to say it. So not learning it off by heart, but just sort of putting a bit of time into thinking about it, and then also looking at the person's specification for the job role and trying to consider whether the reasons that you're applying for it link in with those, because that's sort of going to help you with this. And just trying to show your enthusiasm for the role as well is good. So in terms of another question that's often asked, it's some sort of case scenario. So you might be given a written piece that you need to go away and look at and then come back to the panel, or as part of the interview you may be asked some sort of scenario around safeguarding, or just when you get a first new referral and what would you do in that scenario. So it's really testing your practical skills and your knowledge. I think that something good to do is to just approach it in your mind like you would an actual real case. So when you've got a new allocation, you tend to look at your notes and look on the system and any case notes, any warnings, things like that, to sort of start yourself off with the conversation of how you're going to answer this question. I find that that can set you off well with being on the right track, and then thinking about the risks if there's any issues with the case that you're given. So a lot of the time I've had case studies where there's been some type of self-neglect or abuse from maybe a family member, and you have to point that out and then consider whether the person's at immediate risk, or if they're not, then considering making sure that the appropriate agencies are involved and whether it meets safeguarding, and then make reference to the specific part of the legislation you're looking at, just to show your knowledge around that. And then you could always look at throwing a theory in just to show your knowledge. So if it's an assessment, talk about the exchange model of assessment, just sort of adding that in, and then thinking about sort of some of the things that come up. I had one where it was about someone with fibromyalgia, and I knew a little bit about that, so it kind of helped me to think. I'd have considerations around what time of the day someone gets more tired, or considerations around what might be useful, like key safe, spice line, practical things that you might know from your local area. And if you're applying for a job where you have had some experience, you'll be able to weave some of those things in and just show that you are someone that can do the job. My main thing to say is not to make any firm recommendations, because the panel will know that you don't have all the information until you've spoken to the person, and it's all about sort of making sure that you're taking a person-centred approach, and you're not going to be someone that has all the answers straight away, and that you recognise the importance of people having autonomy over the decision making, and that you're supporting them to be involved as much as possible. Another question that comes up a lot is around what skills you have that you could bring to the role. So something to avoid is just generally listing things that people are going to say. So it's important that you hit on key things, like if you've got good communication skills, like written and verbal, but then go further than that and say I'm really good at report writing, or I've got good organisational skills, I'm good at communicating with people, and then give an example. So something that I tend to use is around a situation where someone was really hard to engage with, but these are the things that I did, and then I go into that example. And sometimes you can have an example that can hit on a few things, but just make it explicit what you're trying to say you're meeting. So it might be a situation that shows that you can also deal well with conflict with other professionals, and you can say that you're a good team player, and things like that will help you in the job. Then there's also things around the practicalities of what you're going to be doing day to day. So working a lot on systems, so use of ICT and report writing, so your record keeping needs to be really good. Things like that are really important. You're probably going to get a question around a situation where you dealt with conflict, so you need to think about the skills that you had in dealing with those sorts of situations, and maybe have an example ready of how you've dealt with a challenging situation with a service user, but then also other professionals as well, and maybe even with a colleague, because sometimes that sort of question can come up. Another question you may get is how you can ensure your professional development and that you're maintaining your CPD. With these sorts of ones, you need to recognise that that's a requirement of you in your role as a registered social worker, and that you need regular appraisals, supervisions, that you don't take a one-size-fits-all approach to your work with the people you're involved with supporting, that you recognise the importance of theory, keeping up to date with legislation, mandatory training, you know, just make sure that you're sort of touching on that, but then also think about the team that you're applying to go into. If there's no one there that's like a practice educator, that might be a good time to say that that's something that you'd be looking to do. Or if you're less experienced and you need to do your ASYE year, just sort of say that you're interested in doing that and progressing and supporting other people within the team as well. Also important to recognise the importance of getting feedback as well from service users and also other professionals. In terms of something important to prepare is just keeping yourself up to date with the legislation. So you may be asked a specific question about the legislation you'll be working within. So because I work with adults, it's like the Care Act, safeguarding, but with those you just need to make sure that you remember to say the specific parts of the legislation that are important, like section 42 safeguarding. Just make sure that you're sort of remembering them for the day. Also, like the statutory guidance and things you need to be aware of, safeguarding principles and things. You might have to give some examples around how you do manage a caseload. So it's good to think about how you manage time, your emails, things like having your organisational strategy, and then examples of how you use that. So I have like a colour coding system, I use Microsoft Word and tables to manage my caseload. Just giving like an explicit example like that can be really helpful. Just some last things here that I thought would be useful to mention. Think about a piece of work that you're proud of, some research that you recently did around theory or, well, just general research or a case law, just in case you're asked a question on that, so it doesn't throw you. And then around what the priorities are of the local authority that you're applying for, because sometimes that can throw you because it's not something that you look at, but in the interview they might specifically ask that, and you can usually find that on the job application. When you apply, there'll be some person specifications and also general points about the local authority. Think about the practicalities of social work. So it is a stressful job and you need to recognise that everyone experiences that at some point, and think about how you sort of manage that yourself and some of your coping strategies, and that you are someone that knows when to ask for help and what helps you sort of manage. Thinking about examples of that, so things that you do for your own well-being to show that you're proactive with that. And then maybe have an example of how you've worked in a diverse community as well. So I've tried to come up with as much as I can around things to think about for an interview, but it'd be really helpful if people could comment below if they think of anything else, so we can keep this as the best possible tips for people going for a job. So if you'd like to like and subscribe, that'd be really helpful for the channel, and also press the notification bell so you can be updated when I put another video out. Thank you.